BeTheTalk, episode 340, featuring Betty Esperanza. Welcome to BeTheTalk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself, I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Betty Esperanza. Betty, are you ready to talk?
I'm always ready to talk.
Betty Esperanza is a founder of Skateboards for Hope, a cause to foster leadership with children living in poverty. Her passions are focused on arts and culture, storytelling, entrepreneurial projects, and creation and development of sustainable communities. Betty Esperanza, welcome to the talk.
Thanks for having me, Nathan. It's really, it's quite exciting.
All right. So, full disclaimer right here. I am a former backslidden skateboarder. I was coming into this in the late 80s, basically quit in 1990 because I decided I wanted to study and really prioritize some of the other things I was doing. But I came of age really in that death period of the late 80s where, Tony Hawk and all the, Christian Hosoi and Steve Caballero and all of my heroes that I'm Instagram buddies with now, which I'm just completely stoked about that. They all had their incomes dipped and everything like that. That's a little bit of backstory. Second disclosure piece here is Betty is upgrading and relocating, and it's all awesome, except that she's joining us from a coffee shop today. So I'm actually muting her right now because there's a little bit of background noise. And I think the Skateboards for Hope thing really gives her the edge. I wanted to make this interview happen, and let's talk about her talk here. Here's a little bit of the backstory. Her talk is called "What If Skateboards Could Give Hope and Break the Cycle of Poverty." Basically, Betty went to Cuba several years ago when it was still, maybe recently opened up. She taught kids to skate. They'd almost never seen a skateboard before. I mean, nobody was a skater. Fast forward 3 years after that, it is absolutely thriving. I love what you're doing in Cuba. I love what you're doing all over the world. And I love that skateboards are literally saving the world. Betty, please take us behind the talk.
Okay, well, the talk was really easy to do, actually. It was just telling the story of how I started with one skateboard, and now I've reached 1,000 kids. It did start in Cuba. I gave a skateboard to a kid, and I promised him I'd come back. At the time, I was married to a Cuban. So I was visiting 3-4 times a year. Us Canadians are really lucky, and I'm only 3.5 hours away by plane.
Nice and warm.
Which is a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to go to Cuba like 3-4 times. Not expensive. And I didn't even think anything of it. I just thought, okay, I'm going to give the opportunity to these kids to learn how to skateboard. And it ended up pushing me to make a not-for-profit because I saw not only the benefits of getting kids out to do sports and building a community, but also a way to end poverty. And that's pretty much how it started. And now there's like NGOs from the United States and Germany and, even Brazil. Like there's Mexico. There's a lot of charities that are dropping their boards or their decks when they visit the island, which is great because there's no other way for them to get it. So I'm more right now. My concentration for Cuba is more about building leadership. So with Yohani Perez, who is our ambassador, but he's also the ambassador for other NGOs. He really is the quintessential ambassador of skateboarding. He's like the number one skateboarder. And so, I funnel all my, knowledge. And now he's into creating festivals and opportunities for his community. And that's the whole point, is to create a sustainable goal using skateboards as a tool.
Have you done much work with the Tony Hawk Foundation or any of these other foundations? Because I'm just so happy in my later life here, because 25 years ago it was like this kind of bad boy, rebellious. Everybody had skulls on their skateboards, and then our parents didn't like that, and then it just put this generation gap out there. And now I'm seeing little kids skateboarding. There are skate parks in my hometown in central Pennsylvania. Now I'm just so happy, and now there's skateboards and skate parks in Cuba. So I just love how you and you weren't really all that into skateboarding before. How did you stumble on this, or did I just completely miss that piece, Betty?
I was a skateboarder, but I wasn't a really good skateboarder.
Mm-hmm.
I pretty much hung around. I was one of those skaters that hung around other skaters who were really good.
We had a name for those, and it's the same name as your first name. We called them Betty's, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you are literally the skate Betty, the quintessential skate Betty right here.
Yeah, or the original Betty. I don't want to take away Patty McGee's title, but I feel like I'm an original Betty. I encouraged skateboarding. I wasn't really good at it. I could do like half a kickflip, but
I wasn't very good at it either. I could do hills. In central Pennsylvania, we didn't have many ramps, but we had hills. So I would go down the hill and usually not fall over as long as my trucks were tight. And if they weren't tight, or if someone was following me, then it wasn't good, because I'm like, don't follow me down the hill. And it didn't go very well. Or if there was gravel or construction where there was in my neighborhood, not too good. So what's the future look like for what you're doing, Betty? I'm really excited about it.
Well, right now we're in different places in the world, and we're concentrating in 2019 in collecting used skateboards. Actually, what I do different than anyone else, and I've been doing it for over 15 years, by the way, it's not just recent, is I collect used skateboards, I recycle them, give them a little renovation or uplift or facelift, and then we redistribute them to kids, underprivileged children. The idea is that we're not taking away business from skate shops, because we need skate shops. We need
the ecosystem.
It's a really it's like a $5 billion industry. So I mean, not in this combined in the world, but I'm obviously in the States it's bigger than here in Canada. You have 10 times more people, but it is a growing industry. And after 2020 Tokyo Olympics, where it's going to be featured, it's going to be even bigger. Yeah, it's going to be bigger.
That's amazing.
So the idea, I don't expect companies or other than the charities and not-for-profits like myself to actually try to build skateboard communities in underserved, underdeveloped countries. Even if the countries themselves invest in the infrastructure, they are never going to be able to reach out to all the kids that don't have skateboards. By the way, skateboarding is great, but it can also be used as transportation, so it's got a double entendre. And that's what happens in Cuba or in Uganda, even on First Nations reserves here in Canada. So the kids actually feel free, they feel independent, and they feel like empowered because they have a place to go, they can get around, they can hang out with their friends. And when you're doing skateboarding, you're not concentrating on anything negative. You're concentrating on surpassing your limits and also trying to achieve your goals. So whether it's trying to get an ollie, perfected or kickflip or anything like that, you spend hours with your friends, skateboarding. And so skateboarding is a great sport, and it's a great tool. It's also, for me, when I watch kids who have nothing or just not even shoes, and they're skateboarding, they got big smiles on their face, they walk away thinking everything is possible. And that's why it's called Skateboards for Hope. Apart from the fact that my last name means hope, that's just by accident.
Your whole name is like a wonderful double entendre here, Betty.
Yeah.
This is great. Yeah. Well, and this is, I'm going to make some connections because I never thought about that before. Skateboarding is wonderful because it's you versus you. I mean, yeah, we have competitions and it's got a little political in the 80s and the night, and whatnot. But I mean, it's like Danny Way creates the mega ramp. It's like, who thought of that? I mean, it's like you versus you, and different people do have their own signature style and the things that they're known for. And I mean, even watching, someone like Lance Mountain, who in documentaries later in life that I've recently seen, I mean, I always thought he was a real hero to me, but he was kind of like an everyman who just made skating down the street kind of an adventure. And that was what made Lance so special. And he was a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek rebel figure in a sense. But what I now know as a instructional designer, someone who has been a adjunct professor teaching these graduate courses, it's so important to kids' development to be a self-directed learner, to be competing against yourself, to not need, the token trophies for not really doing anything. Other than just kind of participate. I'm not trying to rip on that too much, but I love this whole idea of the whole child education. Going to mute the barista back there. Go on a little bit of a monologue here, but I am just so. I'm just so passionate about that. And my friend and episode 150, Superintendent Michael Hines, his whole talk about the whole child, and physical education, emotional education, social education. That's what skateboarding is. It's this wonderful thing where you learn how to take turns, you learn how to compete, you learn how to collaborate. And what I love the most about watching, these Instagrams of all of my heroes who have already mentioned and referenced, it's kind of funny because they're maybe 5 or 10 years older than me, but it's like a bunch of old war heroes congratulating and honoring each other and really just respecting each other in such a deep way. And it's so wonderful to me to see that. So any thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, definitely. I mean, like any sport is beneficial to a child's development, but mostly when it's individual, what happens is the child or the youth, because usually they're like between 7, 8, 9 to, let's say, 15, 16, 17. There's a lot of development going on. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of stress, a lot of social pressure. But skateboarding in particular, I would compare it almost to like martial arts. It's a discipline. You have to take your board out. You have to find a place to go. If you don't have a skate park, most of the places that we deliver to don't have skate parks or are building their first ones. As shabby as it sounds, I mean, they just need a flat surface, right? Or not, if they want to do half pipes. But the observation that we've had, and as a mother that I've had, is that there's something called pride that is instilled in the child or the youth. And the fact that they overcame a challenge creates success. And organically, what happens is they start to believe in themselves. And this confidence that they get is innate. Everybody has it. It's just that we have to find a tool, a way, a vehicle for them to express themselves. And skateboarding does that. Whether you're into it like 100% and gong ho, let's go skateboarding, or you're just trying it out, the fact that pride, this sentiment of pride comes about is everlasting. So you'll never forget when you did your first ollie or your first kickflip or how much fun you had with your friends or strangers, because skateboarders are very well known to just high-five it, say, hey, okay, that was great. They don't even know each other's names, but somehow they get along. And this common courtesy comes with skateboarding. So there's a lot of benefits and values to skateboarding, for sure.
Well, we've been enjoying this talk with Betty Esperanza. Her talk is called What If Skateboards Could Give Hope and Break the Cycle of Poverty? And we're going to come right back to Betty Esperanza while we pivot over to you, Talk Universe, in the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with Betty Esperanza. It is time for the Blitz Round. I'm going to give Betty a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of her recent talk. Are you ready, Betty?
I don't know, but let's go.
Let's do it. All right. First off, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
No, you invited me. I really like that.
They invited you? I'm not I didn't have I didn't organize the talk that you spoke at. So I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about that.
I was sorry, I misunderstood. Yes, I was invited to talk at the TEDx Youth in Montreal.
Excellent. So in terms of preparation, are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
Well, they made me memorize it. So, which I didn't think I could possibly do. We were not allowed to actually see anything. There was no prompter or anything. So I had to write it and memorize it. And then, of course, I got to talk.
Excellent. What's your advice for other people that are not used to memorizing? How did you do it?
Well, I think what it is you have to build like an image of what you're trying to say. And maybe there's like a one sentence out of every paragraph that you're attached to. And that usually lets it go. I'm actually a freestyle type of talker. Even when I do conferences, I do often. I don't try to follow a script. And I try to interact with my with the people that I'm giving a talk to. But this is like literally you're talking, but you're not just talking to the 500 or 1,000 people in front of you. You're talking to the whole world. So that was a bit intimidating. But at the same time, I realized that my message, I wanted to spark an interest, whether it was youth or even adults, to do something outside of their comfort zone and to be able to give a gift of kindness and to help kids flourish, no matter what their background was.
Betty, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Nothing too strange, but the guy that came after me, he was a world-renowned street performer, singer, rapper, dubs. FX, what was his name? Dub FX or something, from Ireland. And just before I went on, he said something to me, and it sort of like bumped. I went, oh shoot, I can't remember what I was supposed to start with. And I was so impressed by him that when I walked out, I actually ad-libbed the first line. So that can happen. My suggestion is stay focused.
Yeah. Well, we've been enjoying this Blitz Round with Betty Esperanza. Her talk is called What If Skateboards Could Give Hope and Break the Cycle of Poverty? You can find out more information about that talk. You can actually watch it on our show notes page at BeTheTalk.com. You can also check out Betty's organization at skateboardsforhope.com, skateboardsforhope.com, and we will have a link in the show notes to Skateboards for Hope as well. And we will be back in just a moment with Betty Esperanza's final word of advice. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And we're back with the final word of advice from Betty Esperanza. What is it?
Always try, do your best, and never give up.
Betty Esperanza, thank you so much for the amazing, awesome work you are doing. Skateboarding is not a crime. And right. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe today.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. And anyone can reach out to us, whether they want to donate, collect it, use skateboards, or find out how to actually start programs. That's free. We give that out for free. So, this is the whole idea, is to create a world where kids can actually enjoy and learn and surpass their limits and become successful.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.